repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough.
Dear Mr. Massa, I'm just trying to mind my own business. What's the matter? It's just another day, another black king captured. I'm about to lose my brain, stuck inside this ghetto rapture. I got a lot of smoke. If you want it, you can have it. They want a hat trick, but this is black girl magic. Ain't talking about the kind that'll make you disappear, but I'm talking about the power of the melanin within. Ain't looking for trouble, but I'ma say this one time. I put two dukes up if you try to touch mine. We still want justice for Tamir and Trayvon. You say you don't see color, but racism ain't blind. They targeting little kids whose skin look just like mine. So I'm paranoid, it's a war zone outside. And I'm a black queen, so if you ask me to step out of my car, you gon' have to snatch me. Cause I ain't going no damn well. Had to spend my whole life living unfair. Ancestors got my back and they right here. You can never understand, it's a nightmare. Living in my black shoes by the black rules. You can keep your handshake, I don't dap coon. The white man to go nuts if he cash you. But you all on his side like a damn fool. Make it make sense.
We are oppressed.
Queen.
We are exploited. We are downtrodden.
Make it make
We are
sense.
denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
Ahmadiyyah.
So the only way we're going to get some of this
Ahmadiyyah.
oppression and exploitation
Queen.
away from us or aside from us is come together
Queen.
against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your
Ahmadiyyah.
hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin?
Ahmadiyyah.
Parents, pay attention to the books, the school system, even to your little children. Lies mixed with wisdom. His skin too bright, so he was blind to the prison. My skin just right, so I collide with division. You trying to pray to God, but we tired of religion. No savior saving, we got to save our savings. We used to pay miss, how we gon' make the slave rich? But who's to blame, and tell me why you complaining? We need a team effort just to rule the nation. Like a bad relationship, missing communication. We missing moderation. They're trying to get a poison to my population. No reparations, I'm getting tired of Satan.
We are oppressed.
Queen.
I'm getting tired of waiting.
We are downtrodden.
Queen.
We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
Ahmadiyyah.
So the only way we're going to get some of this
Ahmadiyyah.
oppression and exploitation.
Queen.
Touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I won't always smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all in Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get mad. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threat.
This is the sound of Eric Malcolm.
It's a cut on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threat. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans, and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, touch one of mine, you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X to my jeans and I got...
This is the sound of Image Fun.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to the Queen Ahmadiyyah TV show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah, and this is your daily vitamin. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click that notification bell and click the word all so you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. Okay, so let's get into it. Give me just a second. I'm uploading some overlays real quick. All right. So as I was telling you guys, for those of you who are on the backup channel, we got to talk about it because they found a man hung from a tree. Okay. So let's see who is all up in here. Now, listen, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Dr._A_Shakur, TikTok at Dr. A Shakur, Twitter at DGoddess27. And as per usual, if you don't like what the Queen is cooking, you already know what to do. Okay. And for those of you who missed the first broadcast where I was talking about Kabami and Trump, please make sure you check that out. All right, I'm almost done here. Just one more to upload. Okay, there we go. Now, I would have been done, you guys. But right after I started to go live, I got saw another story that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so let's get into it. Hey, Stacey Quinn, Queen Sam's in the house, Sophie B, the Prince of Paraphernalia, TC Dan, Claudette, Nessie X, Get the Chili is here, Deronda telling it like it is. All right. So shout out to everyone in the chat. I see you, Pierre Alcut, Skeletor fan is here, Desmond. Shout out to my moderators putting in work and everyone tuned into the Queen. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Let me put this man's picture up here on the screen. Okay, so this is the man who they found deceased. Okay, hung from a tree. Now, it's all interesting because they say that he was apparently supposed to be suing the police. Now, I actually heard somebody mention this story yesterday, and when I went to try to find it, or maybe about 2 days ago, when I went to try to find it, I couldn't find any information on it. Okay, because there seemed to be no news reports. So, was in fear for his life. Family suspects lynching after Alabama black man found dead hanging from beam after filing lawsuit against abusive police. Okay. Denoris Richardson, a black man who earlier this year filed a lawsuit against the local police department in Alabama, was found dead last month, hanging from a rope in an abandoned house. I'm sorry, wasn't hanging from a tree. He was in an abandoned house. Now, his family believes the 39-year-old man may have been lynched by the police because he was suing the Sheffield Police Department in Colbert County. Now, they say after a while, his wife, Leanne Richardson, told the media that police had been repeatedly arrested, or they have a typo. He had been repeatedly arrested, beaten, and harassed by the police over the years. Okay, which intensified even more after he filed his lawsuit in February, accusing 6 officers of violating his Fourth Amendment rights through excessive force, as well as denying him medical services under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, his wife, Leanne Richardson, says, I need answers. Okay, this was made to look like an suicide, but it wasn't an suicide. Isn't that what they always try to make it look like? Isn't that what they always try to do? When it's one of our people found lynched, in fact, this is what it always is. Oh, nothing to see here, folks. No foul play. There he is again. Very sad story, but let me continue. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Now, she said her husband had been harassed by Sheffield police officers after he filed his lawsuit against him on February the 25th. Now, Richardson's mother, Bonita Richardson, also said that her son was under a lot of stress since he had filed the lawsuit because he feared retaliation from the police officers who had already abused him. She said he was really in fear of his life. Okay, I think it's a homicide.
Now, Richardson's attorney, Roderick Van Daniel, is also suspicious of his client's death and is calling for a federal investigation. But Colbert County Sheriff Eric Ballantyne, whose office investigated the death, said all evidence indicates that Richardson took his own life. I mean, this is a likely story. How many times do we have to hear this? How many times do people who expose the police, call them out on their corruption and their BS, report police brutality, racial profiling, and not just Black people? It doesn't matter, because I told you guys that Frank Serpico, who was an NYPD officer, he reported them and they tried to set him up to get killed, allegedly. Okay? So, yeah, if you say anything against the police, you turn up like this, and then we're all supposed to think you did it to yourself. Please pay attention. Now, goes on to say, they say, we spoke to family members that said the last time they had spoken to Mr. Richardson, he had been depressed. Now, this is what the police are saying. Worried about his future as far as the charges he was looking at. He was just down and out. He was giving some of his property away. It appeared to be an apparent suicide, says Ballantyne. The DA's office ordered an autopsy. Now, the body was sent to the Department of Forensic Science, in Huntsville, and the cause of death was suicide. Well, they can say that. I'm sorry, but it's just not a common thing for Black people to hang themselves, okay, whether it's from a tree, a beam, or anything else. Now, Richardson's body was found hanging by a rope from a beam in an abandoned house on September the 28th, after the Colbert County Sheriff's Office received a call about a suspicious vehicle, according to Ballantyne. Okay, now, and Ballantyne is the sheriff. Now, they say, we've spoken with the mother at length, the sheriff says. She seemed to think that Mr. Richardson was depressed because his estranged wife had been giving him some problems. They had been separated. There were a lot of things going on in Mr. Richardson's life. But Bonita Richardson denied telling the sheriff that her son had been depressed. Now I want y'all to pay attention, making up blatant lies. And you know he's lying, because why would the mother tell him her son was depressed, but then turn around and say that she doesn't think that it was suicide, that it was a homicide? Okay, please make it all make sense. Clearly lying. She said, my son was joyful. He didn't have any mental issues. He would never kill himself. He would not hurt himself. Patent narratives. Now, Richardson was attending a hearing at the Sheffield Municipal Courthouse over drug charges on November the 30th of 2022, when the judge told him to step outside of the courtroom, according to the lawsuit, which describes Richardson as asthmatic and diabetic. The lawsuit states that Richardson was attempting to use the restroom when Sheffield Police Lieutenant Max Dotson assaulted him by grabbing his arms as if to arrest him, even though Richardson had not done anything wrong. Now, it's not clear from the lawsuit as to why Dotson grabbed Richardson by the arms, but Dotson was later fired and convicted on assault charges over another incident in 2022. The former cop was also arrested on DUI charges earlier this year. Now, but after Richardson was transported to jail that day, he ended up further attacked by Sheffield police officer Darian Fontaine, who struck him in the throat with the palm of his hand and shoved his head against the wall before falsely charging him with assault. So he's going to assault him and then charge him with it. Okay, this sounds familiar. Now, from there, Dotson and Fontaine strapped Richardson to a restraint chair for 3 hours. And I'm sure we've all heard about those, very inhumane and used to torture people, in fact. Now, where they called him a bussy with a P and an MF and told him nobody can help you. Dotson later sprayed pepper spray into his cell, knowing that he was asthmatic, and also stepped into the cell to punch him, according to the lawsuit. Now, Sheffield police officer Brett Evans then tasered Richardson under the orders of Sheffield Police Chief Ricky Terry, and he was once again placed in the restraint chair for several more hours. Okay, just low down and nefarious. This is all so crazy. Now, Sheffield police officer Elbert Pope was named in the lawsuit for denying Richardson food and medical care. The lawsuit mentions another incident from earlier this year on January the 9th, where he was viciously attacked by Sheffield police officers Billy Hall and Seneca Butcher when he attempted to use a phone to in the jail to call 911 for medical help. So Richardson was out on bond prior to his death. And they say, as far as our investigation goes, we want to be transparent, says Sheriff Ballantyne. Oh, sure you do. Transparent, telling your lies. Okay. He says, we've even placed a call into the U.S. Attorney General's office to see if they could maybe take a look at it also. It's just a request because there is some concern as far as the family goes. We don't mind them coming in and taking a look at the case. Now, you know what the family should do, in my opinion, because these people are some devils. They are some low down, dirty devils. And what the family should do is they should continue the lawsuit. Even though he's deceased, they have the information. It's already been filed. They have his attorney. I would still move forward with the lawsuit. If they lose, they lose, but it's worth a try. That's what I would do because they think by taking him out. Now, I'm not going to say they took him out, but if they did take him out, do they think that's going to make it go away? I would prove to them that it isn't. Okay? I would prove to them that it isn't. This is all so crazy. Now, y'all think that's a coincidence? This man files a lawsuit against the police, and then all the stuff that he said the police did to him, it does sound very suspicious. It does sound very suspicious, especially when his mother and his wife said that he was not depressed, okay? He was not feeling depressed at all. And so anyway, please pay attention. Now, with that all being said, everyone, please like and share. Because let's talk about how this restaurant, they say they didn't want to let former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms in because of her attire. It seems like this happened to her one time before, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Atlanta, Georgia, former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms says that she was denied service at an Atlanta area restaurant because her clothing was against its strictly enforced dress code. However, she claims that she saw something different. Now, Bottoms took to social media on Wednesday after the incident. She said she was wearing yoga pants to a restaurant with a business casual, and the restaurant has a business casual policy, but other patrons were allegedly wearing similar clothes. Now, we've seen this all before. Do you all remember the video that I did about maybe 3 years ago where the guy had a restaurant and he would not allow this black man in because the man was wearing sneakers? He said the man couldn't come in because he was wearing sneakers, and they did have a policy that you can't wear tennis shoes. But there was a white woman in there with tennis shoes on, and her son had on tennis shoes too. And then when the man brought that to his attention, he said, well, they're wearing Adidas or something like that. He specifically named the brand of tennis shoes they were wearing. But I'm like, why does that even matter? Then if that's the case, you should say people can't come in if they're wearing sneakers unless they're wearing these sneakers. But that's not what they said. Okay, so please pay attention. Now, she says, I was again told by a hostess that I could not be seated in an Atlanta area restaurant, not the same one as last time. See, I knew this sounded familiar because this has happened to her before. Do these people just not like former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms? I have questions. Okay, she says, because I had on yoga pants, which was supposedly against the strictly enforced rules of the business casual policy. Now, after I pointed out that there were other patrons, she says, none of whom looked like me, who had on shorts, baseball caps, flip-flops, all of this in the restaurant. The manager then offered to seat us, okay, in the not so full restaurant in an hour, she says. Honey, she wouldn't have had to seat me because I wouldn't have wanted to stay there. I'd have probably come back later on with a whole bunch of more people that look like me with picket signs just to draw attention to it and call them out on their nefariousness. That's what I would have done. And before I left, the first time, mind you, I would have taken a recorded video footage of the people in there with shorts and flip-flops and all that on, okay? Because this is not business casual either. Yes, I may not be dressed for the occasion, but look at them. That's what I would have said, okay? I would have had proof and receipts. Okay, so anyway, Bottom said she didn't end up eating at the restaurant, but added that she hopes to connect with the owner soon. Bottoms also said that she wasn't going to name the restaurant because she did not want people calling or threatening the staff, which she said happened during a previous experience. Well, I'd still name them anyway. I would name them and I would just tell people, please don't call and harass them. But if you look like me, maybe you wouldn't want to eat there because they seem to be a little biased. That's exactly what I would have said. Nothing wrong with that. Just being honest. Okay. She said it can't just be me. In 2022, she claimed that she was denied service for wearing leggings to the Capitol Grill at Perimeter Mall. In 2021, a French restaurant in Buckhead allegedly denied Atlanta Hawks basketball legend Dominique Wilkins for similar reasons. Honey, they didn't let Dominic Wilkins in. He's a whole legend. They must be racist. Okay. I'm sorry. What? Okay. At the end of the day. Mm, mm, mm. So with that all being said, H. Townsend Kelly says, why do people constantly patronize where they're not welcomed? Exactly, beloved. You know, that's a good question, but it just reminds me of some of our ancestors who back during civil rights were fighting to end segregation so that they could be integrated into places and spaces with people who didn't want to be bothered with them. That was nonsensical because of all the things that our people could have been fighting for civil rights. To me, that shouldn't have been won. Okay, that shouldn't have been one. And look at the ramifications of it till this day. Excuse me, for all of those who fought to get rid of segregation. And here we are today. And has anything really changed? I literally just told you a story about a black man found hung. Okay, and how many stories of that have we heard, in the past decade? So anyway, I find it all interesting. Now, let's talk about these black women who keep coming up dead at this hospital. Now, do you all think this is just by happenstance? And let's not forget that I drew attention to this a couple of years ago when I did an expose on these black women and how so many black women died during childbirth, like 3 to 1 in comparison to the white counterparts. Okay, and some of this seems to be by design as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so let's talk about it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. I'm going to share my screen because this is the third black woman to in a span of 4 years. Okay, that's almost one every year. Okay, which is too much. How is this even happening? It's the same hospital too.
This is the third Black or brown woman to die in childbirth at Woodhull Hospital in the last 4 years. Beverlyne Garcia Barrios appeared to be a healthy 24-year-old pregnant woman, but that all changed last month when she came to Woodhull Hospital. She wasn't feeling well. Doctors rushed her in for an emergency C-section. The father of her child never saw Barrios again. It was Sha'asia Washington in 2020. She also had an emergency C-section at Woodhull and then died. Last November, it was Christine Fields. The New York City medical examiner said she died of hemorrhaging from a C-section also at Woodhull. New York City Health and Hospitals wouldn't discuss Barrios' case with us because of patient privacy, but said in a statement, over the last years, we have been particularly focused on helping reduce the unacceptable maternal mortality rates among women of color through innovative interventions.
Were you recently injured in a car?
Now, I'm sorry, but that all sounds real suspicious to me. Okay, how are these women dying? That's too many. That is far too many. Okay. Buckhorse DC says Dominic Wilkins backward slam dunk. He'd like that. That's the dream team. Okay, Buckhorse DC. We know you like Dominic Wilkins. All right. He is a legend, beloved. But this is also crazy, right? So this is the third woman in 4 years. Now, do you all don't find that suspicious? Because I definitely do. I absolutely do. It happens all too much. And then meanwhile, we have these idiots who murdered a 5-month-old. Let's talk about it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Let me put their picture on the screen. That's them right there. Please pay attention. So, parents waited 4 days to get help, according to the sheriff. So, a 5-month-old Texas girl who was left brain dead after being brutally beaten over the course of a horrific weekend has died, and now her parents are facing criminal charges, according to authorities. So, on September the 29th, a baby girl identified as Janae was rushed to a local hospital suffering from multiple rib fractures and a brain bleed. This is so darn sad and nefarious. They were beating the crap out of this poor baby. And this is according to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. It says, after suffering a horrific weekend starting on September the 26th of 2024, where she was said to be throwing up, partially paralyzed, vomiting blood, etc. It wasn't until Sunday that she was taken to the ER. Now, I want you all to marinate on that for a second. This baby was vomiting, partially paralyzed, vomiting up blood, and you're going to wait to take this child to the hospital. They wanted this baby to die. Dirty devils. Now, the baby appeared to have old and new fractures, calling the situation sad and disturbing. Gonzalez says her prognosis was grim when she arrived at the hospital. Janae, who had no brain function, died of her injuries on Wednesday, October the 2nd. May she rest in heaven. This is all so sad. It's saying her parents, Glenn Wayne Smith, age 25, and Jasmine Ellison, age 23 of Houston, were arrested and charged with injury to a child and serious bodily injury. Now, in court, prosecutors detailed how the two allegedly waited to call 911 to get help for their daughter. They say the abuse is said to have taken place over a 4-day period, or the most recent abuse, now in which the child was in the care of both, with the defendants, was in the care of both, and this defendant and the child's father, the defendant and the child's father, says the prosecutors. Now, the child was found with multiple serious injuries, including swelling and bleeding of the brain. No brain activity at the time of admission, blood coming out of her mouth, broken ribs, healed broken ribs. Prosecutors alleged that medical staff said the injuries were likely caused by aggressively shaking the child. Smith and Ellison remain held at the Harris County Jail. Initially held on a $1 million bond, Smith's bond was later reduced to $250,000. Now, Ellison's bond was set at $150,000. Their attorneys were not immediately contacted, didn't immediately respond. This is just all so sad. Like, who does this? What is wrong with people? Hold on, let me go to the news report. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Thank you in advance. Just all so egregious. I mean, if you don't want children, why have them in the first place? Or give them up for adoption while you're still at the hospital? This is just torturous. And to think that they did this to a baby and then didn't even have the decency to get medical attention right away.
Child abuse allegations have landed a Houston couple behind bars.
We know the 5-month-old victim was allegedly brain dead when she was hospitalized late last month, and investigators say she died last week.
ABC 13's Alex Bozargian is live in the medical center with this awful story. Alex.
Well, Erica, the couple has no prior criminal history or past run-ins with Child Protective Services. But what investigators find so disturbing about the allegations here is that even if somehow these injuries were inflicted accidentally, the couple is accused of just waiting, watching this little girl get worse. And when they finally did bring her to the hospital, it was too late.
Jasmine and Ellison, please stand up.
A mother in court for the part she allegedly played in the heart-sinking death of her baby girl, Janae Smith.
The abuse was found to have occurred over a 4-day period, or the most recent abuse, in which the child was in the care and custody of both this defendant and the child's father.
Janae's final days, described by the Harris County Sheriff's Office as, quote, a horrific weekend that began on September 26th. During that time, it's alleged that Janae's father, identified in court records as Glenn Smith, was abusing the child, and Jasmine Ellison, her mom, failed to take action. This all happening inside their North Harris County home on Plumwood Drive. Investigators say Janae was partially paralyzed and throwing up blood, yet Ellison and Smith waited until September 29th to call 911.
The child was found with multiple serious injuries, including swelling and bleeding on the brain, no brain activity at the time of admission, blood coming out of her mouth, broken ribs, healed broken ribs.
The child was assessed at the Texas Medical Center, where she ultimately died from her injuries.
Medical staff said that the injuries were likely caused by aggressively shaking the child.
Ellison and Smith were questioned by detectives.
Both ended up giving statements to the police that were inconsistent with the injuries.
Ellison's court-appointed attorney claims the 23-year-old mom did seek medical care for her daughter, but didn't specify when.
I was told to bring the child in if things got worse or reoccurred. And then it appears the child declined while my client was at work.
We did speak briefly with Janae's grandmother, who investigators say often visited the couple's home, but she declined to comment. Smith is being held on a $250,000 bond, while Ellison's was set at $150,000. At the Texas Medical Center, I'm Alex Bozargian, ABC 13 Eyewitness.
That is so sad. Absolutely deplorable. Okay, may they rot in piss at the end of the day. Just low down. And if the mother knew about it and wasn't doing anything, she's just as guilty as he is. Okay, so now let's talk about this school where these teachers have been accused of giving these elementary school students, without the parents' permission, mind you, something known as sleepy stickers. Have you all ever heard of that? Ones in the chat, if you've ever heard of sleepy stickers. Because I never heard of this until I saw this report. Okay? Until I saw this report. And they're giving it to people's kids without getting permit from the parents or anything. So let's talk about it. Like, step, everyone, please like and share. Okay, so most people saying they haven't heard of it. Okay, I sure hadn't until this came out, like I said. And it was just by a stroke of luck that they even found out, because one of the children just decided to say something. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen.
And 2 aides have been suspended so far. Still, they don't feel comfortable sending their kids back to school. What happened with the sticker?
The sticker makes me fall asleep.
This is 4-year-old Lane Luviano. She's the one that broke this case open in September when she snuck one of her sleepy stickers out of the classroom.
She kind of pulled up her little shorts and said, "Mom, look, this is my sleeping sticker." And I was like, "The what?"
When Lane's mom, Lisa, saw the sticker, she thought it was strange and asked her daughter about it. And the teacher gives it to you, where she put it?
On my arm.
On your arm? Which part? Point to it. Right up there?
Yeah.
And what's it look like?
Sleeping with a moon on it.
Lane's dad says he's known something was wrong since school first started.
2 o'clock in the morning, I'm hearing the room, some noise in the room, and I'm going over there. She's still up.
And so she gives you the sticker. You put the sticker on, and it makes you tired?
Yeah.
Wow. And all the kids get them?
Yeah.
They never notified the parents.
So Lisa took matters into her own hands. She reached out to the other parents in Lane's class, sent them pictures of the patch to see if their kids were getting the stickers too.
I showed it to my 4-year-old, and she said, yes, that's the sleepy sticker.
Melissa Guilford immediately went online to research the sticker.
Sleep Z patch. Okay, so, and if you read the ingredients on them, it has a lot of, it's just things I've never even heard of.
And they're giving them drugs to make them sleep, to keep them quiet.
Najala Abdullah tells us she'd noticed changes in her son, who told her he'd been getting the stickers too. She says he'd been crying, stopped eating, and was bringing home lunches that he hadn't touched. The parents shared with us an email they received from Northgate Crossing Elementary's principal today. The email states 2 of the school's staff members were put on leave after they allegedly administered sleeping supplements to students on September 24th. The email also states the Spring ISD Police Department is investigating.
The unmitigated gall. What if the children, yeah, that's definitely a lawsuit, okay? I would be filing real quick, because how dare you give these children something they're not supposed to have? You didn't get permission from the parents just because you don't want to do your job. Just because they don't want to do their job. But remember, there was a guy who had a sleepover for his 12-year-old daughter, and he gave her friends some sort of sedative. Do you all remember that? He gave them some sort of sedative, and the only reason he got caught is because one of the girls got sick, and he had to end up taking her to the hospital. Okay, if you don't want to be bothered with kids, then don't get a job where you have to deal with them all day, every day. And if you don't want to be bothered with them, don't invite them to your house for sleepovers. Oh, it's so crazy. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Now let's talk about this bad arse little 10-year-old Who decided to go for a ride? Okay, not for a ride, for a drive. That's what he did. 10-year-old drives stolen vehicle across school playground near children. Could have killed somebody. Now, first of all, what's a 10-year-old doing driving or even knowing how to drive and then stealing the whole car? So let's get into it. Likes up, everyone, please. Like and share. Thank you in advance. This is all nefarious. I mean, he was driving right at the school playground, it looks like. Hold on. And then I heard that he was supposedly a repeat offender. Okay? This is what they say. Okay, here's the video right here. Who's raising these kids? Y'all have any answers? Because I sure don't. All I have are questions. Please pay attention. Y'all see that car? That's him. Look at him, driving like a bat out of hell. Driving all across the grass. Look at him. I mean, he could have killed multiple kids, including himself. That really was coming close. Now, what was that all about? Claudette said, not a bat out of hell, Queen. Yes. That's exactly how he was driving, okay? And so here's what they say. And he's already been arrested before. That's the thing, 10 years old and you're arrested already? Okay, so a 10-year-old boy was arrested for driving a stolen vehicle across a crowded school playground, and police say the boy is a repeat offender. Now, in a surveillance video from September the 20th, the car is seen on the grass and sidewalk as school staff at Nellie Stone Johnson School tried to move children out of harm's way. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said the boy was booked into Hennepin County Jail, Hennepin County Juvenile Detention Center on October the 3rd for probable cause, second-degree assault. Now, police said the 10-year-old boy is a repeat offender and has at least 30 incidents dating back to May of 2023. Like, what is his mother or father doing? Now, he has been arrested at least twice for auto theft related crimes, and is listed as a suspect in more than 12 cases that range from auto theft to robbery to assault with a dangerous weapon. What? Do y'all hear this? Mr. Elevation said, where are his parents? Exactly. He's a whole menace to society and he's not even in middle school. What's he doing with a weapon? I can only imagine the home environment that he's growing up in. They say it's unfathomable that a 10-year-old boy has been involved in this level of criminal activity without effective intervention. Okay, and prison is not an acceptable option for a 10-year-old boy. But the adults who can stop this behavior going forward must act now to help this child and his family. This is why one example of the revolving door we're dealing with. Okay, arresting and rearresting the same juveniles for auto theft and other crimes. Now, this is a complex issue, and we need every entity involved in intervention to come together immediately to establish short and long-term solutions. These parents are not doing their job. Now, when when kids become teenagers, sometimes the parents can't control them because they do nefarious things, when they're outside of the parents' watchful eye. But at the end of the day, a 10-year-old, where is he getting all this freedom to be out here stealing cars? Now, if he'd been arrested one time for stealing a car, he should be on very strict surveillance. I'd have cameras in his room. I'd have cameras outside the house. He wouldn't be going anywhere. I'd take the door off the hinges. He wouldn't have any privacy, and you don't get any. You're a kid, okay? He wouldn't be going anywhere except to school. I would be dropping him off and right back to pick him up. He wouldn't be on no cell phones playing no games. What is going on here? This is all crazy. Oh, really says arresting him ain't going to do it. He needs some type of help and some training, molding, and discipline. This is all true. And that's basically what they were saying. They said that people have got to do something to stop this going forward because rearresting him, right, that's not going to do anything. And they said prison isn't the option for a 10-year-old. But that's going to be where he's headed unless they get him in line now, unless they get him in check right now at this age, because this is ridiculous. Stealing cars and then burglary, robbery, assault with a weapon. This is all just too much. Okay, this kid's going to be a whole felon before he grows up. Absolutely crazy. Okay, likes up, everyone, please like and share. Now let's talk about this woman. Hold on. This thug, shall I say. 34-year-old Milwaukee woman found guilty of stabbing her older sister with an 8-inch kitchen knife. That's what she did. That's what she did. So let's talk about it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Here we go.
Milwaukee area parents mourning the loss of their 35-year-old daughter recently stabbed to death.
Our Madeline O'Neill joining us in the studio. And Maddie, just as heartbreaking here is the person accused of killing her.
Yeah, Ted and Mary, it's one thing to lose a daughter to homicide and another to learn that another loved one may be behind it.
It's just like, metaphorically speaking, like a Bermuda Triangle.
As a bar owner, Dexter Carter can help customers navigate through their problems.
We're psychologists, psychiatrists.
His daughter, Tessa, came to him too.
To this day, you have no idea how much that means to me. It means a lot to me.
But he says lately, he's been in a haze himself.
Our emotions are mixed up.
Raising money at his bar for Tessa's funeral.
She will always just say, when she come in, Daddy, I love you.
It's not just the grief of dealing with the death of one daughter. There's the added shock of knowing another daughter.
You couldn't separate them on anything. And that's why it's just so unusual.
Is the one charged in Tessa's death. Carter's love for the two he describes like twins only doubles the pain.
There's no way we should be burying our daughter. There's no way we should have a daughter downtown.
34-year-old Kiera Gaines has been arrested, accused of stabbing her sister, 35-year-old Tessa Gaines, at their home April 26th. That's according to a criminal complaint, which says the sisters had been fighting.
We would love for her to get the help that she needs.
Kiera's parents say their daughter's mental health struggles were a factor. A defense attorney said in court, Kiera had plans to check herself in for treatment a day after her sister's homicide.
Don't push nobody away.
Carter urges everyone to open up about their problems and to be a listening ear for others.
Mental health is a real issue. A lot of people don't think about it until it hits home.
The sister's mother also says 9 years ago, her son was a homicide victim as well. Tavion Millams, an up-and-coming rapper here in Milwaukee. We do have a way.
No other. Milwaukee area parents mourning the loss of their 35-year-old daughter recently stabbed to death.
Prayers and condolences to them for their loss. And this is the reason why people need to absolutely take mental health issues very seriously. Some people don't. And then sadly, some people wait until the last minute and then they want to start talking about mental health issues when you've had opportunities to help these people. Why wait until it's too late, until they do something dangerous to themselves or someone else? This is something that should be checked right away. Okay? No time to tarry is all I'm saying. Now let's talk about this man that's on death row and he didn't do it. And DNA evidence is showing that he didn't do it, but they're trying to ignore that. And if you're wondering, he isn't my skin tone. He's a white man, but at the end of the day, he was homeless. So like I told you guys before, they don't care about black people in this country and they don't care about the homeless people. That's why they don't mind that we have a homeless crisis, but yet they continue to send money, billions of dollars, mind you, to foreign countries. Please pay attention.
Most of his life on death row for a 1992 murder he confessed to is getting a shot to fight for his freedom after another man's DNA was determined to be in the victim over 30 years later. Authorities say in 1992, Christopher Barber, a homeless man, and two friends showed up at Thelma Roberts' home in Montgomery, Alabama. Police say she invited the men to come inside and drink, and while there, Christopher Barber held Miss Roberts down while his friend sexually assaulted her, before Barber stabbed her to death and set small fires around the house. Barber confessed to the crime, but later recanted that confession, saying it was coerced by police who kept hitting and threatening him. Barber was a homeless man who said he didn't even know Mrs. Roberts. Still, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. But now his story is getting some attention from the courts, after attorneys for Barber presented evidence that the DNA found in the victim belonged to another man who is already in jail for a similar crime. Attorneys say a new test determined the semen found in Mrs. Roberts after her death belonged to Jerry Tyrone Jackson, who was a neighbor of the victim at the time and is currently serving time in jail for a sexual assault and stabbing death. A federal judge has set a conference hearing on the case for October after expressing doubts about the state's new theory in the murder. The state contends that Mrs. Roberts, a 40-year-old church-going woman, had consensual sex with Jerry Tyrone Jackson, who was 16 years old at the time and a friend to her children, and later invited a separate group of homeless men into her home to drink before she was assaulted and killed. The judge said the theory, quote, defies logic, common sense, and science. As the case proceeds through the courts, we'll keep you updated at al.com.
Okay, all nefarious. And then so now they're just trying to ignore the fact that this man's DNA doesn't even match. And yes, the man did confess, but how many people give false confessions when they're being beaten, brutalized, and threatened? Because they said that the police were beating this man. Okay, this is all crazy. This is all crazy. So with that all being said, now here's what they say, some more of the backstory to the crime. It was the spring of 1992. Thelma Roberts lived on Manley Drive in Montgomery's Chisholm neighborhood with her two children. The 40-year-old was married, but she and her husband were separated, and he didn't live in the family home. She went to church often, didn't drink or smoke, and wasn't dating according to her family. She worked as a housekeeper at the hospital on Maxwell Air Force Base. Didn't he just say she was drinking with the two homeless people? But in here it says she didn't drink or smoke. Now, across town, Christopher Barber was 22 years old, grappling with the death of his mother, who had recently died by suicide. Now, mind you, this homeless man already dealing with the death of his mother, 22 years old, and then this happens. He was homeless, and court records describing him as living in a wooded area behind the Eastdale Mall. He had briefly lived with his grandfather, but had recently been kicked out of the house for not following the rules. By all accounts, Barber didn't know the Roberts family. Back in Chisholm on March the 20th of 1992, Roberts' two children met up with some friends after school, including their neighbor, Jerry Tyrone Jackson. Jackson was 16 years old at the time, and Roberts' kids were 16 and 17. Now, according to court records, they say the night started with the Roberts teens when they went to another friend's house around the corner on Amanda Lane. Now, the two Roberts kids stayed the night, leaving their mother at home alone. There were several other teens and preteens, including Jackson, at the house on Amanda Lane. Things started off rocky. According to court testimony, the host of the party said Jackson exposed himself to a 13-year-old girl. Clearly nefarious, okay? And the girl ran home. The host was upset because she didn't want to get in trouble. Her mother had banned Jackson from the house after he was rumored to have went through the window with a screwdriver and raped a girl who lived nearby. She testified in 2023. Just a whole varmint. Now, Jackson was arrested for rape in the late 1980s, according to his own deposition. Court records don't reflect on how the case ended because Jackson was a juvenile at the time. Now, at some point, after exposing himself to the young girl that night, the teens all said in depositions and affidavits filed in the federal lawsuit, Jackson then left the party. He returned at some point later that night to ask for a cigarette before leaving again. He didn't stay the night. The next morning, the Roberts teens walked home, unlocked the door, and found their mother dead in the in the bedroom on the floor. Now, the initial investigation. They say, according to federal court records, investigators determined that Thelma Roberts was murdered sometime during the night on March 20th or in the early morning hours of March the 21st of 1992. She was found at about 11 a.m. when her son went inside her bedroom. Police didn't find any signs of forced entry, and the Roberts kids maintained the door was locked when they got home. So that would indicate that she likely knew her killer. There's no forced entry, probably someone she welcomed or invited in. And then when that person left, surely they locked the door. Now, investigators from the police and the fire departments wrote in their notes, scanned in court records, that Roberts had been burned. Okay, soot, ashes, and partially burned materials were found throughout the house. An autopsy later revealed Roberts died from 9 stab wounds in her chest, but she also had been raped, strangled, and beaten. A butcher knife from the kitchen was left protruding from her chest, and there was a plastic bag over her head when the kids found her body. Just imagine her children finding her like this. This is all so sad. Now, the victim's 17-year-old son took off the bag and removed the knife before police arrived. Several small fires had been started in the home, according to police notes, and this was done using paper and clothing. The flames had failed to catch, but the assailant ripped the smoke detector from the wall and then left the house. The fires, though small, would play a pivotal role in the investigation. Fire officials were already looking for the person or people who started small fires in Winn-Dixie stores across the city. Now, in those blazes, someone had used paper goods to set fire on some of the aisles. Then another person would steal the items, using the fires as a distraction to run out the front door. Almost immediately, police zeroed in on Roberts' estranged husband, Melvin Roberts, as a suspect in the murder. Melvin Roberts said in a 2022 deposition that he was handcuffed to a chair at the police station for 12 hours and that one detective kicked him in the chest. They kept on terrorizing me until I told them I was going to talk to my attorney, and that's when they quit. Authorities searched Melvin Roberts' car, performed a blood test, and seized his clothing, and they didn't find any evidence of a crime. Now, Detective Danny Carmichael, the primary investigator on the case back in 1992, described Melvin Roberts in his notes as a very ignorant individual and very frightened of the police. Well, I'd be frightened too if they had me in a chair kicking me in my darn chest and already accusing me of a murder I had nothing to do with. But let's continue. Police notes from the time don't indicate abuse of Melvin Roberts, but he could recall those details even decades later. He says, "I'll never forget." Okay, this is what he said in a 2022 deposition. According to the judge's latest order, Montgomery police remained focused on Melvin Roberts until a Caucasian pubic hair was discovered on the trace sheet in which Mrs. Roberts' body was wrapped. The Roberts family was Black. Now, after the discovery, authorities pivoted and started to look for suspects who were white. Police notes from the first days and weeks of the investigation were scanned into court records, memorializing the steps that police took. Dozens of reports from various officers and from Carmichael, the primary investigator, recounted interviews with scores of people, primarily teens and preteens, who hung out at the Manley Drive area or who were affiliated with local gangs. Now, each of those interviewed pointed to another, creating a string of endless teenage tales in which police tried to distinguish the facts from the rumors. Okay, one boy interviewed who gave cops over 10 names to look into, and he was only in the 8th grade. Carmichael wrote after early interviews saying they didn't yield any results. I directed that there would be no more overtime, and I ceased work on this case at the time. Now, this was a Saturday afternoon, and I did not return to this case until Tuesday morning. He made notes on all of his interviews. About the victim's teenage son, he wrote, "I do believe he is an intelligent individual, but just sorry. The same dumb basic answers. I don't know, I don't know." Okay, and one victim's teenage daughter, an even worse case to interview, he says. "She appears to be dumb and slow. She was only frustrating for police trying to interview her." But eventually, about a month after the slaying, some of those interviewed gave police the names of men sleeping behind the mall, casually mentioning the two men both Christopher Barber and Christopher Hester, both named Christopher. Okay, and so that's how they got them in their radar. So he and another investigator, former fire department Lieutenant William Davis, they all went to the mall and found 22-year-old Barber in the food court. Now, they took him to police headquarters. They questioned him intently, according to the notes. One of them said he's a wimpy little thing and scares real easy. Now, while Barber didn't appear violent, the cop did write that he heard Barber lost his temper when he was drunk. He said, "We did not get anything concrete from this individual." He denies this emphatically. Barber wrote that Carmichael in his notes was possibly a Satan worshiper with occult type tattoos on his body. According to the prison system, Barber's tattoos, none visible on his face or neck, are of various skulls: a smiling skull, an iron cross with a skull in the clouds, and a flaming skull. Okay, so when Davis and Carmichael had previously visited the homeless encampment to look for Barber, Davis noticed that he noticed some Winn-Dixie wrappers and packages. Davis told the court last year that he thought Chris may be a viable suspect for the grocery store fires. A few days after the initial questioning, authorities again visited Barber behind the mall. The two spoke, and Davis said that he wanted to talk with Barber about the teenage group and the fires at the Winn-Dixie. So then on May the 1st of 1992, Barber went to a nearby fire station and took a polygraph test. He went because Barber said, after being threatened with violence, I wasn't going to say no. But the polygraph didn't focus on the grocery store fires or the teenagers. It was about the slaying on Manley Drive. So, according to Barber, the officers were verbally and physically abusive at times. Judge Murks wrote this in her August order, and saying Detective Carmichael repeatedly slapped Barber in the face when he did not know the answers to Detective Carmichael's questions. At a hearing last year, Davis denied any misconduct involving Barber and said that he had a very good relationship with Chris. Now, at one point, Davis told the court, "I can't testify what Lieutenant Carmichael did. I was not present at any of that." He maintained that there was no inappropriate contact with Barber or any other suspects in the case. Attempts to reach Davis for the story weren't successful. Carmichael has since passed away. Now the confessions. Now, a fire department lieutenant administered the polygraph, asking questions about the fires at the victim's house. That lieutenant told officers that Barber had failed the test and that police fed him dinner, and Barber agreed to talk. Okay, sounds like an episode of 48 Hours. Now, Barber wanted a tour of the fire station, so Davis showed him around. Barber also got to sit on the fire truck. He said, "I go back over to my office and I go through it again. I talked to him again about what happened, and then I took a taped statement." This is what Davis told the federal court last year. Seems like he left out the part about him beating and terrorizing the man for hours. Now, according to the judge's order, Barber gave 3 confessions. None were in the presence of an attorney. Okay, of the 3, one was audio taped and one was videotaped and one was not recorded at all. After the polygraph, Barber and the cops talked for hours before Barber made a recorded confession, according to the judge's order. Now, according to Barber, he was shown crime scene photos and told details about the crime scene before he confessed. Barber also claims that he rehearsed his confession 4 or 5 times before Lieutenant Davis would record it. Now, so the police officer knew this man didn't do it. I want you to pay attention, because if you really did it, you don't have to rehearse a confession. So the cop's sitting there letting the man rehearse the confession 4 or 5 times before he presses record. Okay, clearly he knew what he was doing. And the sad thing about that, when they arrest the wrong people because they just want to get credit, and just close the case, is that the real killer is still out there somewhere. Do they not care about that? So following the taped confession, Carmichael from the police department showed up, and he took Barber to the police station, where Carmichael and Barber talked for about 3 hours in an unrecorded conversation, according to the judge, before Barber made a videotaped confession. This is what Barber told authorities happened on the night that Roberts was killed, according to the federal judge's order. He says, "On the night of March 20th, Barber, Hester, and another man who was a juvenile at the time and was ultimately prosecuted were driving to Jackson's house to hang out with his older brother. He didn't know Jackson. When that man didn't answer the door, Hester went to Roberts' house, knocked on the door, and asked if the 3 men could drink inside. She agreed and let them in. At some point, Roberts and Hester went to the bedroom. Barber heard arguing, so he went to the back bedroom, and a physical altercation broke out. He then, along with the juvenile, held Roberts down while Hester raped her. Then Barber stabbed her and tried to set her on fire, before the trio left the house." And so then they have the document where he wrote up his confession. Now, they're going to say he didn't mention the plastic bag that was on her head, nor attempting to strangle her. Did that sound right to you? Is what the attorney for Barbara asked Davis in court last year, according to the transcripts. Did that sound realistic to you? Davis replied, I didn't question it. I assumed that and gathered that Mr. Hester knew Miss Roberts. That's the information that we drew. Because they didn't care if they did it or not. Like I said, they just wanted to close the case. And keep in mind, sometimes when police officers solve these types of cases, this puts them up for promotion. Okay, when these detectives solve these things, that puts them up for promotions. So some of them, they'll just lie. They don't care if they have the wrong person. Because it's about the money for them, not about real justice in some cases. Now, Davis also said that he never gathered evidence that was consistent with Roberts letting 3 men into her home to drink alcohol. That goes back to when I told you that they said the lady didn't drink or smoke. So clearly she didn't let these 3 strange homeless men that she didn't even know into her house. Later, autopsy reports showed no alcohol was found in Roberts' system. No beer cans were found in her house either. Now, in court in 2023, a lawyer asked Davis if the DNA match to Jackson made him doubt Barbara's confession. He said no. Who Miss Roberts may have had sex with prior to her being murdered is up to Miss Roberts, he says. First of all, she didn't have consensual sex. They clearly said she was great. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to how he just glossed over that because clearly he was painting a narrative. Now, Davis said, and here's the thing. If they knew that she recently had relations with someone, why wouldn't that person also have been a suspect? But he's just going to go with the homeless man? Yeah, make it all make sense. So anyway, goes on to say, Davis said Barbara's confession nails all of the crime scene facts. Barbara's attorneys, both at his original trial and now, say the authorities threatened Barbara and slapped him in the face. Now, before his 1993 trial, Barbara's first attorneys tried to get a judge to ban the confessions from coming into evidence. Barbara testified at the hearing, saying that typically only one officer was with him and would abuse him both verbally and physically. Barbara told a judge after his arrest, after that day, I had a bad fear that if I didn't tell them what they wanted or, didn't tell them something, that they were going to hit me more. Barbara's attorney said the police used intimidation and aggressive tactics to coerce Mr. Barber, including showing him photos of Ms. Roberts' body and the crime scene. Barber said he was scared back when police talked to him back in 1992 when he agreed to take the polygraph and described the alleged deception leading up to the administration of the polygraph test and its coercive effect on him. Now, Barber further testified that given the violence he had previously experienced from Detective Carmichael and the threats from Lieutenant Davis that he'd gotten from him, he said he pretty much thought that he had no choice in the matter. His grandfather testified in a 1992 hearing, too, before Barbara's trial. He said Barbara was very, very afraid of the police after their first encounter and how one of the investigators had beat him up. Now, in 2001, while Barbara was on death row, he provided an affidavit. He says, I gave those statements only after I had become very frightened of both men and only after they told me what I was supposed to say. But 3 decades ago, Montgomery Circuit Judge William Gordon allowed the confession to be used during the trial. When the case came before a jury in 1993, prosecutors told jurors how Roberts was beaten and stabbed, raped, and burned. The prosecutor said there was bodily fluids that were detected, but didn't say from whom. They clearly weren't from the man that was in prison for it. They also told the jury about the hair found at the crime scene. No one could say how the hair got on the sheet wrapped around her body, but the hair was dissimilar to Barbara's hair. Now, here's the thing. At the end of the day, and then they did have the state's forensic expert at the trial, but here's the thing. They knew that she had relations with somebody, but said the police officer said himself that whoever she had relations with, that's not of their concern. But then they find a pube hair. Make it all make sense. Barbara was convicted and sentenced to death by a split jury vote of 10-2. Several months later, the other Christopher Hester pleaded guilty to a reduced charge, received a lighter sentence, and ultimately served 2 decades in prison for the murder. And he didn't do it either. Now, but the story he told police was different from Barbara's story and even implicated different people. The juvenile the juvenile that Barbara mentioned wasn't prosecuted. Attempts to reach Hester were also unsuccessful, and I'm sure the juvenile wasn't arrested or whatever, prosecuted, because it was a young white male. Okay, it was a teenage white male, and they don't like ruining their lives, but they don't mind ruining the lives of people who look like me when they're teenagers. And also because they knew that it was all lies and BS, because they forced those men to testify or to confess. Now, meanwhile, Jackson, who was 16 years old in March of 1962, lived across the street from the Roberts family. According to court records, Jackson often told Roberts' son that Jackson was going to get his mama. Okay, the teen thought that his friend and neighbor was joking. Okay, he recalled in court, despite how Jackson repeated the phrase several times. On the night of the murder, Jackson left the neighborhood house party but returned later in the nighttime or early morning hours. Testimony from Roberts' son said Jackson came back looking kind of jittery, asking the teen for a cigarette. Now, other teens at the party remembered that too. So one person says, all I know is when we went in there, Tyrone was shaking, asking for a cigarette. And Roberts' son was like, it's in my pants. It's in my pants. And I was like, what's wrong? Why are you shaking? He never would respond to me. He was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He just continued shaking, asking for a cigarette. Jackson was listed as one of several people who were in the front yard when police arrived after Roberts was found dead. And police notes show that cops tried to talk with him that afternoon, but he had already left for work. Jackson left. Likes up, everyone. Please like and share. Thank you in advance. Now, Jackson left Montgomery soon after that, moving to the Florence area in North Alabama, according to court records. In 2003, Jackson, then in his late 20s, was convicted of the murder. He was a whole killer. That wasn't the first or last time, I'm sure. It was convicted of the murder of Monique Vaughn and sentenced to life in prison. Appellate court records in the case show that Jackson beat and stabbed Vaughn in her home in 2001. Okay, after she rebuffed his sexual advances. Vaughn had left Jackson inside as she was friends with his wife at the time. Now, autopsy reports show that she suffered from multiple stab wounds and blunt force trauma to her head, and court records describe the crime scene inside as massive, with blood in almost every room. It was literally a bloodbath. Her baby was in his nursery during the attack but was left unharmed. Jackson and Vaughn lived 5 blocks away from each other in Florence. Now, the DNA. After years of legal battles, they say almost 30 years after the crime, Barbara's legal team in 2021 was finally allowed to retest the semen found from Roberts' 1992 grape kit. Now, the DNA testing came back to Jackson. The state confirmed the results, running a second round of testing by the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences. Barbara's attorneys found Jackson at Kilby Correctional Facility outside of Montgomery, but he wasn't keen to talk. Now, I want you to pay attention. This woman was raped. She had a grape kit done, but the detective said, oh, whoever she had relations with, that doesn't have anything to do with it. Now, in a deposition, Jackson said officials from the Alabama Attorney General's office had already visited him. When the state prosecutor showed up and showed him who they were, Jackson said he didn't want to meet with them. He didn't ask what it was about, only adding that he wanted his attorney, because he knew what they came to see him for. Now, Jackson, in the same deposition, didn't say much to Barbara's team either. Now, when asked if he knew Thelma Roberts or the Roberts family, he said, on the advice of counsel, I plead the fifth. So you can't even admit that you know them? Clearly suspicious. Now, he repeated the answer about 50 times throughout his deposition to any questions that revolved around the Roberts family, or the murder. He just kept saying, I plead the fifth on the advice of my attorneys. So I am through. I plead the fifth to whatever else you got to say. This is what Jackson told Barbara's attorneys at one point. That is what I'm going to say. So we can go on and count through and cut through the chase. Whatever your question is, I plead the fifth to the answer that that's the answer you're going to get. So that's it. Get it over with, he says. Now, in September, Judge Murks reappointed a lawyer to represent Jackson, writing that he remains a material witness who could potentially face a new threat of an additional loss of liberty. Now, here's the state's theory. The Alabama Attorney General's office doesn't argue that the DNA, which the judge called new reliable evidence, is inaccurate, but they don't think it exonerates Barber either. So now they have DNA proven not to be this man's, but they said, no, that doesn't exonerate him. Well, why not? When she was great. Now, at a 2022 hearing, Assistant Attorney General Audrey Jordan argued that the semen only showed Roberts and Jackson had relations, not that Jackson was the one who deleted her. Now, the state's top prosecutor said Jackson and Roberts could have had relations prior to Barbara and Hester and the third man coming into the house and murdering her. They also argue that just because Jackson had relations with Roberts doesn't mean Hester didn't have relations with her too. Well, that is interesting because if Hester had relations with her, why isn't Hester's DNA left on her body like Roberts's was? Okay, please make it all make sense. So although the DNA evidence places Jackson with Roberts at some point within 24 hours before the murder, there is no evidence regarding when, where, or under what circumstances the sexual contact occurred between them, according to lawyers for the state. This is what they wrote in a filing last year. But they don't find it interesting that the same man whose DNA was found there is now sitting in prison for murdering another woman who he also raped and stabbed. They don't find that more than coincidental. And the fact that he kept pleading the fifth and wouldn't even answer any of their questions. Okay, please pay attention. So they go on to say that it does not disprove that Barbara was present when Thelma Roberts was murdered, and it does not disprove that co-defendant Hester raped Thelma Roberts, as Barbara described in his confession. The judge seemed to disagree. In her order, Murks wrote that the Alabama Attorney General's office downplays the significance of new DNA evidence. That's what they do. They will leave people to linger in prison for life sentences or on death row, knowing darn well that the DNA evidence excludes them from having committed the crime. But they'll act like that's not a big deal. Of course, it's a big deal. And see, here's the thing. If they can use DNA to convict somebody in many cases, why is it that when someone's on death row or has a life sentence, then DNA all of a sudden isn't enough to prove that they didn't do it? You see how that works? Goes on to say, and the other evidence inculpating Jackson, including his actions and statements around the time of Mrs. Roberts' murder and before, his other criminal history, and his Fifth Amendment invocations in this case, further bolsters the significance of Jackson's DNA alone being found inside Mrs. Roberts, because it is additional evidence that someone else, Jackson, may have committed the crimes of which Barbara was convicted. So this is just all so crazy. Okay? I want you all to pay attention. So anyway, Murks wrote that if a jury had all of the evidence in the case, it would be unlikely to accept that Jackson and Roberts had sex prior to her being raped and murdered by another group of men, because the theory defies logic, common sense, and even science. And it absolutely does. Absolutely does. Okay, all very sad. Overthought says, I disagree just in this specific case. Twisted Logic said they both could have slept with her, but finding Jackson's DNA creates a reasonable doubt. Exactly. It does create reasonable doubt. But also, not only that, at the end of the day, like I said, the man who lived across the street from her, he was already, according to her own son, saying things about he was going to get his mother. And the guy always took it as a joke. And then, not to mention, they say he came back to the house late that night or in the wee hours of the morning. They also said that he was shaking and asking for a cigarette. What are you shaking about? And then when they kept asking him, he just kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But he kept shaking and smoking a cigarette. Why was he so nervous? And then he had the nerve to be there outside in front of the house when the police showed up. And now he doesn't want to answer any questions. Of course he did it. That's common sense. Okay, I'm sorry, but that's common sense at the end of the day. I mean, at least it is for me. That's common sense. That man did not kill that woman. They have that man sitting in prison right now to this day. Okay, and so with that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. Jay Gray says both women died the same way. Yes, he raped both of them and stabbed them. Okay, and here's the thing. The guy who gave the false confession, he didn't even mention that there was a bag over the woman's head and that she had been strangled, that somebody tried to strangle her. And he didn't mention that because he didn't know, because he wasn't there. Like he said, he only went by what the police told him to say. All right? So please pay attention. Overthought said it does not clear him, just buries the other dude. What was his alibi again? What was his alibi? He didn't have an alibi that they mentioned in the story. I'm sure he had one, but they didn't mention that in the story. This was a homeless person. Okay? This was a homeless person. So what alibi does a homeless person really have? What was the other guy's alibi, though? He was there on the scene. Okay? He was the last one that was seen to have been at the house. All right? And here's the thing. The story that the man in prison told, okay, he said, Barber, that is, Christopher Barber, he basically said that she let him and two friends in to have drinks and that they drank beers. There was no alcohol found in her house. There were no beer cans in the trash can. It's common sense. He didn't do it. He was only basing his lie, the false confession, off of what happened, you know, from what the police told him and what they showed him in the crime scene photos. You see, this is exactly the same thing. This is the same thing that they did to the Central Park Five. Okay, this is the exact same thing they did to the Central Park Five. Beat them, threatened and harassed them, interrogated them for hours, okay, without letting them get any sleep, been given any food, without the aid of their parents or guardians being present, without an attorney. They did the same thing to that man, and they do this more often than people seem to think. Overthought said that ninja guilty. I mean, that's your opinion, but the forensic evidence doesn't show that. And I'm glad you weren't on the jury, and I hope you never are if that's how you think, because it sounds like you're thinking out of your emotions rather than using logic, common sense, and critical thinking skills and going by the forensics, the science, and the real evidence. Okay? So with that all being said, so Overthought says, but what was he really doing all night when he was at the encampment? Beloved, you're asking questions. Did you hear me say what he was doing overnight at the encampment? I don't know. But again, no one saw him there. There was nothing found there that pertained to him. No DNA, no fingerprints. The only reason he was convicted is because he gave a confession. And that's the same reason the Central Park Five were convicted, because they gave false confessions. Okay, like I said, this happens all the time. I don't know if you just don't have any sympathy or empathy because the man's white and you just don't want to see the truth that the black guy did it, the one who lived up the street. I don't know. But at the end of the day, he's sitting in prison for doing the same thing to somebody else. So, like it or not, he's the killer. And that's just the facts. Okay. Pauline said coercion. Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Okay. I'm glad they don't have foolish people who think with their own emotions rather than using logic. I'm glad. I hope they never have you on a case where someone's charged with murder. Okay. No matter who the person is. Okay. Because you sound ridiculous, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. And I just told you I don't know where he was because they didn't mention that. That long information that I gave you, that's all that I have, okay? They never said where he was. And why is that even important after you heard all of the other facts? Okay, Bubba says, yes, Queen, it makes sense. Logic shows he didn't do it. No alcohol at the house. Exactly, just another narrative. And like I said, here's the thing. The police don't care about people who look like me, and they don't care about homeless people. In fact, this whole country does it. That's why we have a whole homeless crisis. They don't care about throwing a homeless person in prison for something they didn't do. They don't. They don't care about throwing a person who looks like me in prison for something they didn't do. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the person's race or ethnic group. When, in my opinion, if someone is falsely accused, it needs to be called out. Okay? That's just what it is. Because it could be somebody who doesn't look like you one day, and then it could be you or somebody who looks like you the next day. Let's not forget that I just reported on the Black man who was sentenced to death, okay, who didn't even do it. All right? Evidence showed that he didn't do it. And many other stories. I told you all about 3 death penalty stories last week where none of those people did it. None of them did it. At the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to ask asinine, irrelevant questions when you have the facts and the proof, and you've had forensic testing done, and you even had a forensic person come and speak with the attorneys and, basically debunk the information that was given in the previous trial. Okay? So that all been said, likes up, everyone please like and share. Okay, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. I will see you all on the spiritual channel at 6:15. Don't forget that we're going to have trivia on there today. Okay, so with that all been said, hope you all caught the broadcast because that's what the questions are going to be about. All right, so with that all been said, everyone enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Enjoy your strong end, not your weekend, leaving you in a weakened state of mind. Each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives. Peace.
Gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got